Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Seen on the Small Screen, a podcast dedicated to the overlooked and forgotten movies of television cinema. I am one of your hosts. My name is Jake.
And my name is Becky. I'm your other host.
So, got a question for you. Are you feeling in a particularly festive mood today?
Ooh, I know I am.
Yes.
Why not?
Question is, are we really in the festive time of year? Smack dab in the middle of June? Well, Flag Day's coming up.
True.
Father's Day.
It is summer.
Yeah, sort of.
Summer break.
In our neck of the woods.
So, I'm sure it's somebody's birthday somewhere.
So I guess we could say that even though it's not a super festive time of year, like Thanksgiving or Christmas, it is nevertheless time to celebrate. At least if you're a kid in school, it's time to celebrate, because school's out.
Yes, it is.
No more pencils, no more books.
No more teachers' dirty looks. Some teachers are celebrating. Most teachers are, working over the summer somehow. Today we're going to be discussing some of the wonderful Charlie Brown TV specials, one of which happens to deal with a specific holiday.
Yes, I guess we'll get into that when we get into it.
Okay, so the Charlie Brown TV specials started in 1965 with the ever-famous, ever-popular A Charlie Brown Christmas.
A show that, according to the television producer that it was going through, decided that it was going to be an absolute failure because it featured the voice talents of a bunch of children. And up to that time, there was really no television special that had really done that. And so, thought it was just going to be one of those passing things in the night that no one was really going to pay attention to.
And yet it has become one of the most iconic Christmas movies of all time. Or Christmas specials.
Yes.
Shall we say. But that is not the one that we are going to be discussing today. But that is the first of the Charlie Brown TV specials.
Phenomena, the Charles Brown phenomena, I guess we could call it.
Yes. The first of the Peanuts television specials. And then there is a whole slew of other Charlie Brown television specials that we'll get to at different points throughout this particular podcast.
Yes, we have a few interesting choices coming down the pipeline, so this certainly will not be the last foray that we'll make into the lore of Charlie Brown and Mr. Charles M. Schulz, the creator of the Peanuts.
But for today, as we mentioned, we are going to be talking about two different specials. We are doing two because they are kind of short, and so we figure, we can get two of them into each episode that we talk about Charlie Brown stuff.
Yeah, but honestly, as we were watching these, actually kind of inspired a lot of discussion, at least on our part, while we were talking about them. Normally we don't talk about these until after we're done with seeing them. I did want to point out one thing, is that in spite of the fact that these were made way back in the, as we said, the 1970s, the impact or the issues that they talk about in these still resonate many decades after the fact, some 40 years later. Because, a lot of the problems that are discussed and the satire that's hit upon in these specials, there's still problems that society deals with today. And so I think because of that relevance, they resonate. So, without further ado, let's go ahead and get started on the first one.
The results are in.
You're Not Elected, Charlie Brown, next on ABC.
The title of it is You're Not Elected, Charlie Brown. And as you can probably guess from the title, this one's going to talk about elections. But we're going to come out and say that this deals with elections in a completely
Not in the modern political realm of elections.
Yeah, this is satire. This is tongue-in-cheek. This is not something designed to make fun of one political view or another. This is just making fun of the political process in general.
Yes, and we'll keep in mind that this particular show was made in 1972. That gives some context for where the political thing is, but as Jake mentioned before, a lot of the things that Charlie Brown talks about are kind of timeless, and they still plague our society, for lack of a better word. So it does talk about some things that are relevant. However, one really fun fact that I found out about this particular show is that it was originally called "You're elected, Charlie Brown." But when Charles Schultz realized that not only was Charlie Brown not elected, he wasn't even running, he didn't have time to go through and change the slide that they used for the background on the title. So they just put in a little carrot, and that's why in the title of it there's a carrot with the "not" written in. I just thought that was kind of an interesting little bit of information about it.
One of those last minute change snafus that, as a writer, is kind of a living nightmare, because it's like you title something, you write a story about it, and then right before your work's about to go to print or on TV, you realize, oh crap, the title, the idea that I had in mind, that actually does not happen in the story. Time for a last minute change. We begin the story with a picture of a school. It's Charlie Brown's school, and school is out. And Charlie Brown's sister Sally comes home from school.
Yes, and she explains that she's got a problem. She's got a problem with her locker.
She can't get it open.
And I'm questioning, because this is not the only time that I've seen this, but do elementary kids actually have lockers? I've never been in an elementary school that has them.
Yeah, well, elementary schools, they have those little cubby holes.
Yeah, but they don't have like a locker.
Well, yeah.
They've got a cubby hole with a sticky note.
Yeah, it's a doorless locker.
Yeah, that was just the first question that I had, but it's not the only time that I've seen it, so that's what I was questioning, because there legitimately could be elementary schools out there that have lockers for the kids. Who knows? Sister Sally is having a hard time opening her locker.
So anyway, this puts her into a bit of a depressed funk. And so Charlie Brown, being the good big brother that he is, says that he's more than willing to help Sally out with whatever locker trouble that she may be having. So that leads us to breakfast the next morning. There's a fun little comment about how, I guess, every U.S. president started their day off with breakfast.
It's a known fact that all of our country's presidents started each day with a rousing breakfast. I don't know how they manage to get together every morning, but I guess that's one of those things about government I don't understand.
Not sure where that fact came from, but it's just something that's mentioned.
Something that kids are always told to make them eat their breakfast, basically.
Yeah.
I guess.
Another interesting fact, Snoopy's up at this time, and he's making himself breakfast.
And he makes himself a full pancake breakfast in just a couple of minutes.
I can crank out flapjacks pretty quick, but I can't beat the rate at which Snoopy was able to do it.
Yeah, but, that's the awesomeness of Snoopy.
Exactly. So Snoopy dines on pancakes, while the humans dine on cold cereal.
So in the process, as they're on the way to school, Charlie Brown gives Sally tons of advice on how to open the lockers at the school.
And this is happening while Sally is really not paying attention much to what Charlie Brown is saying. She's more infatuated with an odd observation she makes about a bus stop that she sees. It's rather amusing. So they get on the bus and they go to school, and yeah, they wind up in a high school or something. I mean, it's their school.
Their school, but yeah, the lockers are full-size lockers that basically should be high school lockers. So no wonder Sally's having a hard time opening her locker, because she can't even reach the lock, and that's actually the problem that she points out.
She's got problems. I guess Charlie Brown technically has problems, considering how
he shouldn't be able to reach them either.
He's only maybe about a half a foot or so taller than Sally, if even that. So, yeah, apparently this is a big problem in this school. You have a bunch of elementary school kids having to deal with reaching high school-sized lockers.
But once they get to the school and they discuss that that's part of the problem is that they can't reach the locks, she immediately decides that's not important and she needs to go to class, but she wants to take Charlie Brown to her class for show and tell.
And the only thing that really happens is Charlie Brown gets incredibly embarrassed because he's not really told by Sally the reason why he's going into her classroom. He thinks that, oh, well, I'm going to be giving her some academic advice or something, but he winds up being the object of show and tell. And yeah, that kind of puts him into a bit of a dither. And then the plot immediately changes, and we kind of don't really talk about that again, because apparently there is an election in the school that's currently going for student body president. And so we have the Peanuts gang. They are talking about who would be a good candidate for school president.
And of course, somebody pipes in and says, oh, Charlie Brown should run. And he decides that no, he won't run because he can't deal with the idea of he might fail. Which, wow, I can't tell you how many times we see people refuse to try something because they're afraid they could fail. But to verify his particular dilemma, Lucy, his friend Lucy, then starts walking around the school and does a quick 30-second poll by talking to apparently everybody in 30 seconds, and comes back to Charlie Brown and saying that no one would ever vote for him, so there's not a chance he would win, so he shouldn't even try. We then find out that Snoopy has come into the school. He's walking around like a student. He spends what we would assume is easily an hour, at least, before someone recognizes him as a dog and kicks him out.
No dogs allowed.
That was the first appearance of Snoopy's alter ego, Joe Cool, which is the version of Snoopy that is usually wearing a t-shirt or a sweater of some kind and a pair of incredibly awesome looking shades, which I guess he uses as a disguise to try and pass himself off as a human.
Yeah, sometimes he'll have a jacket on with those shades.
And this first appearance is serenaded by a really funky little song about Snoopy being Joe Cool. And to me, at least, it sounded like listening to a performance of Schoolhouse Rock or something like that.
Yes. So while Snoopy is wandering around ruling the school as Joe Cool,
there's another suggestion for class president.
Yes. And that suggestion is Linus. And Linus, he's thinking about it. Lucy walks around, does a poll, meaning she bullies kids into saying that they would vote for him.
She basically goes up to a person and says, do you think my brother Linus would make a good class president? And if the person is like on the fence or doesn't think they would, then Lucy begins to ball up her fist and respond with a threat saying, I think that my younger brother would be a good candidate for president.
Don't you? Yes. And so once Linus is convinced to run, Charlie Brown is enlisted as an assistant to Linus's campaign. And then he also enlists the logical choice of Snoopy and Woodstock to help him paint signs. Because, that makes sense, right? And then throughout the election, you see the little getting him elected montage, right? Getting the campaign going montage. But then we also find out that in the Peanuts universe, student body elections actually have access to radio time.
Yeah, which...
I'm not just talking about like local, like a school-wide radio. It's like actual public access radio time.
Apparently they have a full-blown recording studio in this school, so yeah, it's impressive. And Linus, as a candidate, he goes on the air.
Because, again, it's TV world, so student body presidents actually have platforms.
Oh, of course.
They have the ability to say, hey, we have control over homework and lunches and recess, as well as school employee pay. There again, politicians giving speeches full of promises that they won't be able to keep. Could be realistic politics there.
Oh, yeah. The show is in a talk show format, and so they have students call in. The humor comes in where it becomes immediately obvious that the students that are calling in aren't really interested in talking about politics. They instead just want to talk about, well, honestly, anything but. One caller comes in and says, asks a question about rivers, and then afterwards it's just kind of rambling sentences. So there's not really a whole bunch of questions relevant to politics, just...
So basically it's a bunch of kids that are calling into the radio show to get help with their homework. The random thought that they've wanted to ask somebody that's been bugging them all day long.
Or, maybe they're just the kind of people who want to get on the air, even if that means they don't really have anything to add to the conversation. Next scene is the first debate. Schroeder comes up and officially nominates Linus as one of the candidates for the election. And of course, Schroeder being Schroeder, he decides that the best way to praise Linus is to compare him to his favorite music composer, which of course is Mr. Ludwig van Beethoven.
To which the audience is basically confused because Schroeder has his thing, and that's musical composers. but most of the other students aren't really aware of who he's talking about. So when Linus is up talking, instead of talking about his platforms, he starts talking about the Great Pumpkin, instantly losing some of his credibility.
The Great Pumpkin is a gigantic pumpkin, I guess, who rises out of the pumpkin patch every Halloween to give candy to all of the good girls and boys of the world, but only those that wait for him in the pumpkin patch during Halloween. Up to this point in the election, he's pretty much been killing it in terms of numbers because Linus is a very eloquent and intelligent speaker, but when he brings up the subject of his religious beliefs, he gets into a little bit of trouble and starts losing a little bit of support.
However, when it comes down to election time, he does end up winning. He ends up winning because of the fact that he was promising all of these grandiose things that he probably isn't going to be able to keep his promises on.
Lucy has a moment of self-reflection a little bit before the election, saying she kind of thinks a little bit about all of this hard work that she and Charlie Brown and Snoopy and Woodstock have done to get Linus elected, and yet when it all comes down to it, all those people that work behind the scenes, work so diligently, believing this political candidate, never actually get any credit for it. So, a little bit of food for thought there.
The next morning, surprisingly, Linus ends up winning the election, despite his shooting from the hip, off the cuff talk about the Great Pumpkin, but then ends up in a discussion with the school principal, at which point in time he then ends up selling out, for lack of a better word, and promising the principal that he would not do anything without consulting him first.
Yes, which is a little bit of a turnabout because he, all through the election, was promising how he was going to reform this, do that, fix all of the problems within the school. He was going to overhaul
the
education system. I mean, he wasn't stopping at the school. He was going to go to the root of the issue, and he was going to reform like absolutely everything so that the education system would run more fairly for students, teachers, and yet, in the end, after a rather long, after that lengthy talk with the principal, comes to the conclusion that, it's best to just play it safe and only do things when the principal deems it necessary. Which, sadly, kind of makes Sally a little angry, because through this entire time, she's been kind of hanging on Linus's elbow, thinking he's such a wonderful guy because, he's daring to stand up and challenge the corrupt system that is keeping students like her down. So when she finds out that he's a bit of a sellout, she's noticeably a little irritated with that.
Yeah.
He's sold out! We elected him and he's sold out!
But, that's where the special ends. Just with Linus selling out, because it's the typical, he made promises to do things that are completely out of his control, so he can't keep those promises.
Politicians are, after all, only people too.
Yes. So, that would be the end of the You're Not Elected Charlie Brown.
So we've arrived at the second Charlie Brown special for today. This one is the festive one we were talking about. Not about Christmas or Thanksgiving. It's about one of the lesser-known holidays. But oddly enough, after watching it, kind of left me with a happy feeling.
What is Arbor Day? That's the day when all the ships come sailing into the Arbor.
It's Arbor Day, Charlie Brown.
So this Charlie Brown special is It's Arbor Day, Charlie Brown.
Arbor Day, yeah. You remember that day we used to celebrate. Well, we still technically celebrate it. I remember back in the day it was, I want to say it was an actual holiday. We actually got that day off, or at least there was a little more.
I don't remember ever getting the day off. I remember going out and planting trees.
Yeah, if we didn't get the day off, then there was certainly a lot more observance with Arbor Day. Okay, so this one, we begin on a bicycle. Linus's mother has lost 3 pounds biking Linus's little brother around town, and I guess Linus's little brother has lost 5 pounds because of the innate fear he feels every time he's put into the back seat of the bicycle and is forced to ride around with absolutely no control. I definitely sympathize with Linus's brother here. because, yeah, I was one of those kids, and those little plastic backseat, I mean, it's perfect for a kid, and yes, you are strapped in, but it's like that strap feels like nothing. And so when you're zipping down the road without any control of the vehicle, it kind of feels like you're gonna fall off at any moment.
Yes, but he amuses himself by doing things like seeing 99 bottles of beer on the wall, or making comments about how bad of a driver his mom is.
Which, I might add, one of those errands includes a trip to the Arbor Day committee. That's how we get our subject matter for the day.
But then we go to later in the day, after we see that they go into the committee. We don't really spend much time with them in the committee because they're adults, and we can't understand the adults unless you want to hear wah, 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 wah. We don't listen to what happens in the meeting, but we cut immediately to the fact that they're in school. They're talking about Arbor Day, and Sally gives the best answer ever about what Arbor Day is.
Sally is obviously laughed to scorn for that particular answer, even though, in my opinion, it's the greatest pun in the world. Absolutely loved it to pieces.
Yes.
But anyway, yeah, so she feels humiliated, and because she obviously doesn't know anything about Arbor Day based on that answer, she is now required to give a report about the importance of Arbor Day.
Man, I'll just say that is one super strict teacher. You get one question wrong and you have to write a full-blown report. I mean, wow.
Hey, it's almost bad as having to read War and Peace over the Christmas holidays, but that's another
episode.
Yeah, that's what we might be getting to. Who knows? Sally goes to the library, and this time she gets help from Linus, who agrees to help her out.
And so they get to the library, and they do see that Snoopy and Woodstock are wandering around the library as well.
The Snoopy's doing something really weird. He's basically like taking all of the books that are about dog obedience off of the shelf, and he's just like pulling like one after another down and looking at them, and he's laughing hysterically. We never really find out what it is he finds so amusing. Maybe it's because...
Other than it's all the ideas about how to train your dog, and he probably thinks that they're insanely hilarious as far as ideas go of how to train your dog.
He makes some copies of the pages. He makes a copy of an Angry Birds...
the original Angry Bird.
Yes, the original Angry Bird Woodstock. He makes a copy of him as well. And then he gets kicked out. And why does he get kicked out? Well, it's because...
No dogs allowed.
Yes.
I love that running gag.
I love the fact that running gag is always associated with he gets to spend time there before he actually gets kicked out.
Yeah, it's
no
like...
one notices.
Somehow he manages to sneak in, under the cover of... Well, I don't know how he does it, to be perfectly honest. He's just there. He never manages to, like, completely get away with it. He's always discovered and kicked out, and so goes the joke.
Yep. While Snoopy and Woodstock are doing their thing on the copy machine...
Yeah,
Linus and Sally start reading about Arbor Day.
He's opening books and he's reciting all of these academic facts about the origin of Arbor Day and its founder. He's giving Sally, honestly, the best material for her report. Sally, though, isn't... Yeah, it's basically going in one ear and out the other with her.
Sally is Twitter-pated, as is the running gag. Sally is completely Twitter-pated with Linus. And so she's just obsessed with being in love with him and batting her eyes at him and telling him how smart he is and just,
Linus actually asks a question and says, hey, have you actually listened to anything that I've been saying? The only thing that she can come up with is Arbor Day is great because you can sit under your tree with the person that you love and be with them, and that's romantic, and that's what Arbor Day is about.
yes.
So, entirely missing the point.
That's basically what Sally gets out of the research. Meanwhile, we've got Charlie Brown and Peppermint Patty who are talking outside of the library so Patty can brag about an upcoming baseball game to Charlie Brown and then con him into talking about love because, with all this talk of love, I have to wonder if it's Arbor Day or Valentine's Day, but...
Kind of tough to tell in the Charlie Brown universe. It's well known that Peppermint Patty does have kind of a thing.
Oh, she has a thing going for her. She's burning a candle for Charlie Brown.
Yes, she is.
They're having their discussion about baseball games, and Peppermint Patty, while trying to get Charlie Brown to talk about love, she's also bragging about how much her team is going to beat Charlie Brown's team in any upcoming baseball games.
Yeah, so there's a bit of talk about baseball and the upcoming season and whatnot, which is kind of interesting considering how, Arbor Day takes place in September, but baseball season happens in
the spring.
In the early spring. So,
yeah.
Not sure. Well, I guess you're not supposed to think that
in terms of
think
those.
about that too much, but yeah. So we cut back to Sally and Linus. I guess Linus has decided that simply spewing facts from a book isn't going to drive the point of what Arbor Day is all about to Sally. So he decides, hey, we're going to go out and do a little bit of field work. We're going to go and do what Arbor Day founder J. Sterling Martin suggested, which is to simply go out into nature, find a spot that looks pretty good, and plant a tree, plant some flowers.
Yes, and they've enlisted Lucy's help so that they can go and find a good place to be able to find that flora and fauna. And while they're out and about and trying to find a place, trying to find the magic place to plant trees and flora and fauna, they run across Charlie Brown's team's baseball field.
Well, to be fair to them, it's an empty field. It's a wide open space. It's exactly the place where you would want to, do a little bit of conservation. It's a field.
To Lucy and Sally, it was just a field.
Yeah.
But to Linus, he knew what it was. He may not be a baseball player, but he knew what it was, and he expressed some concern about that, and yet Lucy refuses to listen, because why would you listen to Linus? He carries a blanket around with him everywhere.
Yeah. Sucks his thumb, too.
Yeah. A tree gets planted on the pitcher's mound, which is the most logical place for it. And then there's a whole bunch of flowers and bushes and stuff that they will plant throughout the rest of the field.
And while all this is happening, Charlie Brown finds out that they are doing something in the baseball field, but the gang doesn't really tell him exactly what they're doing. So Charlie Brown gets the impression that, they're taking care of the field, meaning that, in his brain that, they're getting the baseball diamond ready for the first game of the season. So, they're out there, they're making those nice white lines for the diamonds. They're, maybe out there mowing the grass. They're doing the basic maintenance upkeep of the field. And
Charlie Brown hasn't figured out, because, he basically never figures out Lucy's passive-aggressive side, where she does things that, quote-unquote, are supposed to help Charlie Brown, but they're pretty much going to hurt him no matter what. So she disguises her efforts, her subconscious efforts, to sabotage Charlie Brown as good, positive.
So around this time, they managed to get all of Charlie Brown's team into this project. So they're all out there planting. They're not pulling any stops. I mean, there is, good heavens. There's a lovely tree that's been planted on the pitcher's mound. There's some lovely creeping vine that has been planted in the batter's cage. The bases have shrubs and bushes in front of them. And I think, if memory serves, yes, they managed to plant a fairly good-sized cornfield out in, I believe it's right field. When they get done, it's a really beautiful image, but is it a place where we want to play America's favorite pastime? That's the real question.
There is beauty in a well-ordered orchard, which is a joy forever. Orchards are missionaries of culture and refinement.
Yes, but they do decide to honor Charlie Brown, because he's the one that's made all of this possible somehow. I'm not sure how that works, but he's their support, and so they decide to name the field after Charlie Brown.
So yeah, they come to Charlie Brown on the first day, or of the day of the first game, and they show up at his doorstep, and they're like, Charlie Brown, we got this wonderful surprise for you. We've been fixing up the baseball field. It's going to be great. And yeah, as you mentioned, we're going to name it after you. And Charlie Brown, when he hears this, man, he is on cloud nine. He's thinking, wow, what have I done to deserve such awesome honor that, I have such loyal teammates. They've looked after my field, and look at that. They're now going to name a baseball diamond after me.
But then once they get to the time of playing the game, they meet up with Peppermint Patty's team, and in typical fashion, Peppermint Patty blames Charlie Brown for everything that the other people did without his knowledge, because that's just who she is.
You can't obviously play baseball on a well-cultivated field. You need open space to play baseball, and there is no open space left in this field because it's full of all sorts of plants and shrubs and trees and crops of all different varieties.
Yes, and so now we fast forward to the game. They decide to play the game anyway.
Mostly because they weren't able to play baseball very well, and honestly, with all the things in the way, they won't be able to play baseball well either.
Anyway.
So, yeah.
So, during the game, you do get Lucy, who makes bets to get kisses from her lifelong love, Schroeder.
She wants Schroeder to give her a kiss if she can hit a home run. And Schroeder doesn't really believe her because in her entire baseball career, she hasn't even managed to hit a ball out of the infield. So the idea of being able to, hit a home run is just ludicrous to him. So yeah, he actually takes the bet. Because we all know that Schroeder, he's not really all that into Lucy. But in this case, he's like, sure. Probably because he figures he's pretty safe in that, she's just going to screw up like she normally does. But what happens? She manages to defy the odds because when you have a baseball field that's filled with nothing but plants and crops, you hit a ball, it winds up in an orchard somewhere, and suddenly that ball becomes a little difficult to find. Lucy gets a home run. She manages to get around all the bases, and there's Schroeder. But in the end, she decides she doesn't need to kiss Schroeder.
Another victory for women's lib.
But going to the other team, you get someone from Peppermint Patty's team who gets a hit that should, by all rights, be considered a home run, as it goes completely out of the park. Yet it is caught by Rerun, who's on the back of his mom's bike, as they're on their way home from the Arbor Day committee meeting.
And even though it's hit clean out of the park, apparently
that counts as an out.
Yeah.
Because somebody outside of the park caught it. That's the thing. But that's okay because we continue with the game.
Exactly.
And Charlie Brown's team is ahead.
Yes, because Peppermint Patty's team, Patty doesn't like the fact that there's a tree in the middle of the pitcher's mound that's making pitching very difficult for her. The scarecrow that has been planted in the outfield actually manages to catch a few fly balls. So
that count as outs as well.
Yes. The plants and everything, in spite of their being in the way, actually managed to help Charlie Brown get into a winning position. Charlie Brown can't believe he's actually going to win a baseball game. And then, of course, at that point,
it starts raining. He opens his mouth just as the heavens open up. The rain starts to fall, and that ends up raining out the game.
And Charlie Brown, he is bound and determined that game is going to go on because he's winning. He's on the verge of winning. He's never done it before. And it's honestly only a little bit of rain, and certainly the clouds are going to go by, and then the sun will come out, and then victory will be his. And
of course, again, this is negating the rule in baseball that if it's that late in the game and it is rained out, they would just declare a winner at that point. But
again,
that is because it is Charlie Brown universe and not real universe.
Yep, so the game is just called, there's no winner, and Charlie Brown is left to himself as the entire baseball field really is flooded with water, a good foot or so. Mm-hmm. While Charlie Brown is just in denial and absolute shock that, his one and only chance at winning a baseball game has slipped through his grasp once more.
And then that is the end of this particular special.
It ends with Sally, who has returned to the classroom and is giving her report. And she gives a rather thought-provoking quote from, again, Arbor Day founder J. Sterling Morton.
Arbor Day address of 1894, he said, "So every man, woman, and child who plants trees shall be able to say, on coming as I have come, toward the evening of life, in all sincerity and truth, if you seek my monument, look around you." Thank you.
Yep.
By saying plant a tree. So, now that we've gone through both of those, I guess we are left with the inevitable question, did we like them?
Yeah, I mean, it's Charlie Brown. It's kind of hard to say that you don't like them. I mean, there are ones that are better than the others, but
Yeah, I think in spite of the subject material they had to work with, these were fairly thought out analyses. I mean, like for the election one, they could have easily gone the route, because, 1972, so it easily could have become let's bash on Nixon because, at that point, he wasn't the most popular guy in his presidency.
Well, but again, that's not what the Peanuts have done.
Oh,
It's
no.
that they'll take shots at the stereotypes, iconic things that just don't change.
Can't really say, that was like this one side or that was like the other side. They're making fun of like everyone.
The archetypes.
Yeah.
Yeah. The archetypes that you see played over and over and over throughout history.
Yeah.
And then you also get insights onto the different people and the different personality types as part of the Peanuts thing. So that's why they're still relevant today, is because they take things that you see consistently even today.
Even with the Arbor Day one, I mean, it's a holiday where we're supposed to be thinking about planting trees or planting bushes or planting flowers or, planting something, and managed to take that and turn it into a bit of a story about, I guess the whole point of that was it was about how plants and I guess nature in general kind of help us out, but they do so completely like from the sidelines. So it's like indirect help. Indirect assistance.
Yes.
The point is that, first of all, it looks nicer when you cultivate an empty area. And second of all, that's nature basically giving back to you as an individual and giving back to you as a community as well, because that's what nature does. It's about getting those bees to come back, those crazy elusive bees. At least that's what I think.
But that's Charlie Brown. You enjoy it, and if you don't enjoy it, that's okay. We enjoyed it. I enjoyed it.
Yeah, for me personally, after I saw the end of that Arbor Day special, I wanted to go out and plant a tree. If a simple television special, whose purpose was mostly to sell Dolly Madison donuts, if something like that can make me want to go out and do something proactive, then I think they've accomplished their job.
Yes.
By entertaining and providing a decent message. Something that I really feel that storytelling in general kind of lacks today.
I could see that.
Not like giving any highfalutin morals or the normal platitudes or platitudes or cliches or anything like that, but, just good, heartfelt advice of, you do this and you will reap the rewards of that hard work and effort. So, struck a chord with me. I'll just say that. All right, and I think that about wraps it up.
Yeah, I think that we've done a pretty good review or a pretty good summation of these stories and given our thoughts.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, would we recommend these episodes? Yeah, definitely. Recommend them and just about everything in the Charles Brown Library. If it's been a while since you've seen these, go back and watch them. They're available all over the place,
Yeah.
YouTube or other places.
Yeah, a lot of them are available on YouTube.
And yeah, they're definitely
They're more
worth
hit
your
than
time.
miss.
I agree. Well, we're glad that you stayed with us for the long haul and hope that you enjoyed what we're doing. Can't wait to come back and share with you more of our adventures in the wonderful world of the TV movie.
Yeah, we'll catch you next time.
Exactly. So until then, I'm Jake.
And I'm Becky.
Hope you all have a good time of day wherever you are and whenever you are.
Yeah.
Safe travels, everyone.
Peace out.